Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 265 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there's nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, yes, dating was a huge part of my life in college. Some things went really well and other things went completely wrong. The process is really about figuring out who you are and what you need from your partner in order to have a long-term relationship. And after losing a relationship that I had prior to graduating college, I realized that, for example, travel is really important to me. So if my partner didn't want to travel, then I kind of knew this is probably not going to be a long-term fit. And I also believe, like she told me at the time, that everything happens for a reason. And sure enough, now I have a spouse that loves to travel. And so it actually all did work out. And so, I think when relationships work, great. When they don't, I think there's something to learn there. I think for you and also for your partner, and it gets you one step closer to finding the ideal person for you. So that's a good thing. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our next guest. Kirstie Taylor is a dating and relationship writer. Her work has been featured in Cosmopolitan Magazine, Well and Good, and the Washington Post, also The Lily. Kirstie helps people feel more confident in their love life through articles, videos. She has an anxious attachment workshop that has hundreds of people feeling more secure in their love life. She also wrote a book. It's called What I Wish I Knew About Love. And she also created the Anxious Lover clothing line. Welcome to the show, Kirstie.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, fantastic. Listen, our college student listeners, they are definitely exploring their relationships. And I think now is the perfect time to have you on the podcast. So that way you can kind of walk them through some of the things that you learned. And then now, obviously, you're in a very successful relationship. So I think there is hope when you think that there is no hope. So let's go.
Totally.
Yeah, so I think there's somebody out there for everybody. It's just a matter of figuring out who that person might be. Now, you decided on the University of Southern California for your undergraduate experience. Now, I understand this is a beautiful campus. I've been there on game day against the Oregon Ducks. It was fantastic. You had plenty of choices, I'm sure, in terms of where you wanted to go to school. But why did you choose USC?
Yeah, so actually, fun fact, I did 3 years at SC. Before that, I did 1 year at FSU. So I'm from Florida. I went to FSU, and then while I was in high school, it's kind of a roundabout story. My dad actually got a job at SC, and my parents moved out to California. So I did a year at FSU. It was cool, it was fun, but they gave me the option, if I could get into USC, I would get free tuition, which is awesome. And I could move to LA and I can be closer to my parents. And being a 19-year-old, I was like, I want to move to LA. I want to move to Los Angeles. And I went and saw the campus. It's beautiful. I want to be a communication major. And they have a phenomenal communication school at Annenberg. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got there.
Nice. Well, it obviously all worked out very well for you. So that's great. And your work has been featured in all of these different places like Cosmo, the Washington Post. You love to write about dating and relationships. So our audience wants to know, why is this particular area the area that you're most passionate about?
Right. So I'm most passionate about it because it was the biggest struggle in my life. I was dating for over a decade, one relationship after another. And some were okay, some were just fine. Like a guy I dated in high school was great. We had a great relationship, but a lot weren't. And it was through the process of kind of changing my dating life, which has a lot to do with self-worth and my own feeling of self-value and confidence, that I found this passion for adult relationship psychology and helping people go through the same process that I went through in the same journey.
Got it. All right. That makes a lot of sense. And you even took a year off from dating. You wrote the book. It's called What I Wish I Knew About Love, which is really just a collection of essays and poems of everything that you learned along with your personal experiences. Now, the interesting thing about you is you're highly sensitive, and you learned that you needed someone who was patient and attentive. So do you believe that we should all take some time off to figure out what we really need before jumping into the dating pool?
I don't think it's necessary, right? I don't want to tell people that they have to love themselves before someone else can love them, because I don't think that's true. Part of healing, especially when it comes to love, is being in secure, loving relationships, healing with another person. With that said, if you have, just a lot of things that are going wrong in your dating life, and you might actually be hurting the other people that you're dating while you're going through your own struggles, taking a break from dating could be a really great option, especially when you're younger, in your 20s, in your early 20s. It's a great option because people might tell you that there's a timeline, things are ticking by. You're 23, you have to meet someone, you should be in a relationship. You don't. You have so much time. So don't think you have to rush dating. If you want to work on yourself and take a break from dating, I highly recommend it. You can make some huge changes that'll last a lifetime.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask you about is, when we're in college and we're looking across the room at a bar or something like that, I mean, we're human beings, and the way that we're wired is first impression, like, what does this person look like? And that's kind of the first thing that stands out when you meet somebody for the first time. But maybe, you're going on a first date and maybe, they're not necessarily Brad Pitt. Okay. So what are the
Mhm.
two questions we should ask ourselves after a first date to see if that should lead to another?
Right. So I don't function off of the idea of there has to be first date sparks or chemistry. I think that it's healthier for that to grow, and it also creates a better foundation. So, with that said, about the two questions, very simple. One, did you like the person enough to want to potentially spend 2 or 3 hours with them on a second date? And two, what side of yourself was brought out around them? Were you insecure? Did you feel judged? Did you feel angry? Were these negative parts of you brought out? Or did you feel calm? Did you feel confident to be yourself? Did you feel at peace? And did you feel like they treated you well?
I think those are amazing, amazing questions that everybody needs to ask because, I think about my own relationship. I mean, I've been married now for 20 years. And I think for me, it was how I felt being around her that I was actually a better person. I,
Hmm.
kind of grew apart from my mom just because of some of the things that she did when I was growing up. And I was explaining to her that, my relationship with my mom was probably strained, is probably the best way that I could
Yeah.
explain it. And she was like immediately like, listen, if we're going to be in this long-term relationship, I need you to have a strong relationship with your mom. Like, this is important to me. And then
Mhm.
suddenly, like, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So now I see myself, kind of changing in a more positive way because this is important to her. And so that kind of really left an impression of what kind of person she is and how I looked at myself, and that I wanted to be a better person, and I could be when I was around her. So I
That's
think you're
amazing. I love that.
so I think your second question is really, really important. Yeah, question number one, do I want to spend another 2 hours with this person? But question number two is, what kind of a person am I around this person? Is it a better version of yourself, or somehow are you getting into the gutter? Like, where are we going here?
Exactly, exactly. So
Right.
important. People usually don't think of that, right? Like how they feel with that person is so indicative of a lot of things that you don't even realize are going on subconsciously. So if you can just focus on how you felt with them, it can tell a lot. It can be very revealing.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think that those are great questions. And you make no bones about it. I mean, you spent a lot of time with exes who were not emotionally available. And I'm assuming now, looking back at it, you can probably see that. But I'm also thinking that at the time, it wasn't as obvious to you. So, what are the signs that they are emotionally unavailable and now it's time to move on?
Right. And this is a very important question. I don't want to fault anyone for being emotionally unavailable. Everyone has their own issues. But as someone who is ready for a serious relationship, might be a sensitive person, finding someone who can share those deeper parts of themselves with you and vice versa is so important. So, how can you look out for that? First off, can they talk about feelings to any extent, right? Can they talk about having a stressful day and get into the details, or are they just like, I don't want to talk about it, and they shut you off? And same for you. If you talk about a stressful day, are they asking you questions? Are they there for you? Can they talk about more vulnerable parts of their life, anything to do with feelings and emotions? Are they open to introducing you to their friends? Do you hear them talking about more deep experience with their own friends or their parents? Do they have a relationship with their parents? Not necessary, but can they at least talk about it and explain why it might not be there or why it is there? Little things like that are just so key. And also, if you want a serious relationship, and this is very huge, are they willing to talk to you about what they want from dating? If they want a serious relationship, if they don't match you on that energy of like, okay, I know that I want a serious relationship, that's why I'm dating. If they're ambiguous about it, if they try to be like, I don't believe in labels, or they just brush off the question, then you probably aren't on the same page, and that person might not be as emotionally available as you would want.
Good points. I like that a lot. The other thing, there's men and women are very different in that men typically don't show their emotion very well. Why is that? It's because the way we were raised, my parents basically told me to stop crying because that's not what men do. And so from a very early age, it's like you're being conditioned to not show emotion. And then we get into a relationship, when we're 18, 19, or 20, and we need emotion, but it's hard because you've been conditioned not to show it. So that's number one that I think we have to be really conscious of. And the other thing that I learned too is that men typically want to save the day. Men want to fix everything that's going on. And sometimes, I learned with early conversations with my wife, sometimes she tells me a story, not because she wants me to fix anything. She tells me the story because she just wants to feel emotions and she wants me to be in that place with her without necessarily the need to fix it. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes. We've had this conversation in my relationship too.
Yeah. And so I think that is also it was a huge revelation for me because I always thought that being in a relationship meant that I needed to save the day and I needed to fix everything. But sometimes they're not looking for you to fix anything. They just want you to understand how they're feeling and be there
Right.
with them in that place. And
Right.
that is, something for me was just like mind blowing. I was like, oh my God, I had no idea that that's what you needed from me. So have those conversations.
Yes, ask the question. If someone's coming to you with something, if your partner's coming to you with something, like, do you want me to help you fix this? Or do you just want someone to listen? Or do
Right.
you want me to validate your feelings? You know, it might sound so corporate to be like, do you want me to validate your feelings? But you'd be surprised how far that can get and how much deeper that can make your bond between each other.
Totally agree. And so this is stuff that I learned. This is like advanced, right? This is like the 201 relationships. So, really great stuff. And, sometimes when it doesn't end well, and, we've both had, breakups where things just don't end well. Sometimes we want closure with that ex for them to somehow take responsibility for what they did and, why they caused this relationship to end. Why do you think that last talk with your ex is not always a good idea?
Right. So you might not get the closure you want. I always say to consider, could you handle it if you had that conversation with your ex and they just completely disregard your feelings? They completely disregard any responsibility that they could have taken, or they maybe even gaslight you into thinking it never happened, or trying to get you to think it never happened.
Mhm.
Could you handle that? Because to me, I'd rather have that ambiguity of why did they decide to end this, or we never had that last talk, than to hear someone who hurt me so deeply not actually take responsibility for that pain.
Mm. Yeah, man, oh man, that's a tough one. I don't know. I've tried my best to have good relationships, even with my exes. I always felt that if there was something that drew me to this person, then obviously they have value and they were brought here for a reason. So I hate like not having any relationship whatsoever. But sometimes maybe that's just best, especially if they hurt you that deeply, then they really don't have a place in your life. So, so there's
Right.
that.
Yeah.
What are some ways that we might be hurting our relationship, the one that we're in right now?
Oh, geez. Many, many ways. But I don't say that dishearteningly. I don't want to make someone think that there's all these different ways that they just be self aware that there are common ways that we hurt our relationship. like keeping score when we argue. You didn't do the dishes last week and it means that you don't care. So then I'm not going to do this, trying to do the tit for tat thing, trying to criticize your partner or blame them for things. At the end of the day, blaming or criticizing really just gets no one anywhere. They're going to become defensive. They're just going to become resentful of you. Let's see. Anything that's contempt. So contempt is doing things like eye rolling or mocking your partner. Anything like that is super disrespectful and is hurting the trust that you have in your relationship. Not bringing things up to your partner, thinking that they can read your mind, not talking about your expectations or any unmet needs you have. Or, and this is something I did a lot when I was younger, running to your friends and complaining about your relationship without ever having brought it up to your partner. That's a big one.
Yeah, I've seen that quite often. So yeah, that's something a lot of people fall into. I watched you as you were going to an animal shelter recently and you were playing with some of the animals, which I think is just great. I'm a huge animal lover myself. Got a couple of cats running around here as we speak. And you kind of were putting the focus on alone time, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, why is it important to have some alone time when you're in a relationship?
Right. So having an identity outside of your relationship is just so important. This notion of your partner will completely complete you or your world will be taken over by them is not a healthy way to navigate a relationship. Having an identity outside of your relationship. When I say identity, I mean, doing the hobbies that you love, seeing your friends, going and doing the things that maybe your partner doesn't like. Those things build up your sense of self-worth and make you realize, hey, I'm a person individually outside of my partner, and make you just feel happier. They give you pride. They give you that sense of, again, self-worth. And having that is just so key, because if your partner is your everything, the moment you get into an argument, the moment there's an issue, it's just going to feel like your world completely shattered because you made your partner your world.
Okay. And I know there are some listeners right now that are thinking about moving in with their partner. This is a big life decision. They think this relationship is going somewhere and now it's time to move in together. So, what conversations should we be having with our significant others before we move in with them?
Right. So the biggest thing is make sure you're not moving with your partner to save money. I've made that mistake twice before. Not a good choice to make. But the conversations you should have before moving in together are things like, how are we going to split up the chores? How are we going to spend our alone time? How much alone time do you need during the week? How do you handle stress? Do you want to handle stress on your own? How can I support you when you're feeling stressed? Talk about things like money. If you can't talk about money, don't move in together. But are you going to split the rent? Are you going to do, one of you takes a fourth and the other takes 3/4 because one of you makes more money, or one of you is going to school right now? Talk about the chores and the money tend to be the biggest one that people don't talk about. But yeah, and then also maybe talk about what this means for your relationship, right? For one person, it could mean this is just a step. It doesn't mean that I'm thinking about getting married with you one day or that we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. Talk about, but if one of you thinks that, if for you, you're like, this is the next step towards marriage, talk to your partner about that. Make sure you're on the same page about what this means.
Absolutely. And I'm with you on the money and the chores. I mean, people don't talk about it, and then suddenly you're in it, and it's like, oh my God, what did I just get myself into? This is a nightmare because
Exactly.
we never talked about it. We never had that conversation, and then it's like, now what? So I think that's super important to have that conversation. Now, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast, and I get to LA quite often for various speaking engagements. So I need to know, what is a great local restaurant that I need to go and check out the next time I'm in LA?
Geez, I have so many, but I'd have to say probably my favorites. There's just a lot of good food on the street. Sawtell, if you've ever been to LA and you love any type of Asian food, Japanese, sushi, Sawtell's the place to be. This is gonna be really random, but I really love this one place called Kura, Kura sushi. It's a revolving sushi place. Normally revolving sushi is a little iffy or weird, but they have great quality sushi. It's really fun because they do the whole, put the plates in and you get points and then you get a prize. And then you can just order fresh sushi. You don't actually have to get it off the revolving thing. That place is amazing. And then steakhouses. My boyfriend and I recently became obsessed with this one place called Baltaire, which is kind of expensive. But if you go there specifically for dessert, get their beignets because they are out of this world.
Very nice. Great suggestions. Beignets and the sushi. Yeah, you can't really go wrong with that at all. And I miss sushi so much. I live in Nashville and we're landlocked. So the sushi is just terrible. It's like
Right.
3-day old, like fish. It's not good. It's not the same as what you're getting in LA. I'll tell you that right.
Yeah, totally. I can imagine.
Well, this has been so much fun. I really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better, Kirstie. So if our listeners, if they want to connect with you, if they want to buy your book, or they want to bring you in to speak on their college campus, where should they go?
You can find me on Instagram, Kirstie Taylor, KirstieTaylor, 2 R's at the end. And everything's linked on there. I usually communicate with everyone via DM. So that's probably the best place to check out where my book is, everything else that I have, and then also to talk with me about speaking or anything else.
I love it. I love what you're doing. I think it's really important to have people out there to kind of learn from and try to get into the best relationship that they can. And so all the advice that you're sharing on your reels, on the TikToks, all of that stuff, I think it's just super important to make sure that we're paying attention to the right things, that we see the warning signs, but at the same time that we also appreciate our partner for everything that they bring to the table as well. So
Right.
Thank you for what you do. I think it's important.
Thank you. I'm glad that we got to do this talk and everything.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kirstie. Make sure that you like it. Make sure that you share it with other college students. That could be fraternity members, sorority members, other students on your campus. And we hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for coming, and we will see you next time.